welcome to Analysts Gone Wild. I think we are on episode 15th. And Sam, you were talking a little bit about we're already at May for 2025. It's unbelievable. So, I'm Robert Kramer with More Insight and Strategy. We have a great group of people here today, the analysts that we have on the team, and we're going to go through the lineup here, and then we'll get into the stories. But I'm excited about what we have to talk about. So, Sheesh, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Shashi Bellamkonda. I work as the Principal Research Director at Infotech. Everybody on the panel is much more knowledgeable than me, so I'm going to learn along with everybody else today with some of the nice stories that Sam and Robert have lined up.
Great. Thomas.
Thomas Liebernight, I'm, CEO, Principal Analyst of Ahead CRM. Now that I need to get formal to prove that I'm more knowledgeable than Shashi, which is going to be hard. I'm mainly covering CRM-ish, CX-ish topics with that AI as well. Mobility.
Thank you, Thomas. Michael.
Sure. Michael Fawcett. I'm the founder and CEO of Ariane Research. And we focus mostly on CX and AI and the intersection of those two.
Great. And Sam.
Hey guys, and Sam Gupta from Elevate IQ. Our focus is enterprise software. On that note, Robert, over to you again.
Great. Well, it looks like I was looking at the lineup of stories, and we're kind of touching into a little bit of some my favorites, which is ERP and some of the vendors. So why don't we kick it off with our first story, which is, I believe, one of the powerhouses, which is SAP. So, the integration of data, I think, is the biggest deal. And it's one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys. Do you think it's the data, the structured, the unstructured, both? And how big of a deal is it to get the data right? Because I know that, how many companies do get it right. I'm sure that, the research that we see, the numbers aren't necessarily accurate. But one of the things I also wanted to talk about, we always discuss change management and how big a deal data is. But is the fear factor a bigger deal than change management? Okay, so let's start with this one. What do we think about the data and the API automation?
I mean, if we talk about our other favorite subject, AI, of course, data is everything when it comes to that, and certainly data automation is going to play an extremely important role as companies get into this. So they have to automate a lot of those processes, particularly when you add in all of the unstructured data sources and the fact that things are siloed and scattered everywhere, as we know, across your business. So just being able to find things, know where they are, zero copy, leave it where it is, but use it. All of those kinds of things are extremely important. And this is Precisely is a great company for all of the different integrations and automations they have. One of the toughest places is SAP, and SAP ERP data is a tough one when it comes to integration, and it seems like this is a pretty interesting move.
Yeah, with the mass upload capabilities, I think are a big deal,
Yeah.
and to get the data right. But as we had all these stories over the past month or two, we've talked a lot about AI and a lot about SaaS applications. Is there a bigger deal for a business to really have your ERP structure correct with the data exactly where you need it, so you can modernize and take advantage of all those advanced technologies? Okay, I'm kind of skipping around, but they kind of go together. What do you think, Thomas?
Well, your original question already has the answer in itself. So how many companies do get it right? Not many is the implication there. And that's why data integration is that much of a topic.
Yeah.
So
What do you-
it's the topic, basically.
Well, people are talking about AI, but I think the data, if an ERP system is having problems, or your output is having problems, or your CRM, because it funnels to it, is having data issues, you have to really look at the source. And a lot of companies, they're not really looking in the mirror, that their data problems stem all the way back to the beginning and the roots, which are really the ERP. And I think that's why a lot of companies are afraid to modernize, because they know that they have to address all that data issues, and it's so complicated. We're not talking about like a couple thousand SKUs. We're talking about thousands and thousands of SKUs of products and customers and just information. So, Shashi, what do you think? Well, I know you guys into that. That's great.
I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a very positive trend. And the positive trend is people thinking of AI as a very cool thing to rewrite emails, to make some nice images, to the actual helping with the foundation of technology, right? So I think of AI first as analyze, predict, and then generate. So I think companies have realized that the use cases of managing data using AI and increasing efficiency and making the data right is much more better investment than any other use cases they have from business right now. So I think it's a positive thing that they're doing this.
Thomas, what were you going to say? Oh, I'm sorry. Or you, somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to contradict a little. So the problem is often not the ERP data in itself or the ERP system in itself, but a proliferation of systems surrounding it.
Yeah.
And then data silos along with missing data governance.
Yep.
So which basically causes, well, the entity customer looking very different in very different systems, and the particular customer, Thomas, even being represented in ways that contradict each other.
Don't you think the customers, so going back to what you just said, because I kind of agree, the customer's complex, not necessarily the vendors. And
They're not the customer, I mean the entity customer in the system.
Yeah.
So the problem is that there are so many different systems with so many different data that have different sources, and no concept on first how the structure of an entity shall be it customer, be it account, be it contact person, be it product, along with the different sources feeding it differently. Means even the contents are different, and that's the problem, along with missing golden records.
Yeah.
However the golden record then looks like, whether it's physical or virtual.
Good point. And I have a point that I want to make after that. But Sam or Michael, did you have a comment? Sam?
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was just going to say that if you, obviously the ERP data, structured data, you've hung all these additional systems on it, which complicates your silo problem and integration problem. But then you layer onto that the fact that we're moving towards a world where we provide more and more autonomy to our systems, and they're using a lot of unstructured data and absolutely have to use a lot of unstructured data to do some of these things. And, and the data management, data quality, data, even just cataloging data ends up as a really good use case for AI agents, because it's just such a big problem.
Yeah, I agree. Sam, what do you think? You want to pull it together?
Yeah, so some very interesting comments. And Robert, to your question, data has always been to have a lot of different layers. It's never one system or one organization or one entity that is going to be responsible for that. But overall, I guess, when you look at this more from the enterprise architecture lenses, and I'm always trying to figure out, where any specific capability or a vendor sort of fits in the overarching picture. So here we are looking at precisely they are talking about SAP data API. So again, going back to the enterprise architecture comment, you are going to have business applications, and business applications are going to be your ERPs of the world, CRMs of the world, other ACMs of the world. There are like million applications, they need to work together, and they all have a place in the architecture. Then comes your data world, which is very, very, very different, because here you are looking at data science, data warehouse, data lake, etc. And I don't know whether you guys remember the overarching announcement that SAP had made regarding SAP BPC, I believe, right? Right. So they are sort of doing this white label arrangement. They had their own data warehouse offering as well. But now these guys are talking about APIs around data layer, which is very interesting. If you read the last comment, they are talking about the mass, upload capabilities from the Excel perspective. SAP as a system in general was always weaker from the data interaction perspective, if you look at the pure play ERP. So this is kind of interesting. But then, I don't know where these guys sort of fit in the picture, because SAP has their own tools such as your BTP as well as middleware and iPass and so many different things. So where are these guys fitting in the picture is going to be my personal question. But seems like they are doing something related to data.
Well, what's also interesting is what you just said. Where do they fit in? They have some gigantic consulting agreements, right, with these other companies, right? i.e., like IBM Consulting, and I'm not sure. I would assume that they're not going to be using this tool for that. So it's a good question. Where do they fit in? I don't know. I don't know if anybody has any feedback.
Well, if you look at the breadth of what they have, I think that's the real issue, right? I mean, SAP does things inside the SAP ecosystem, or even tries to make themselves a little easier to integrate with. But if you think about a business that uses all these different multiple systems and needs to try to tie all that together, having one place precisely to go in and find tools that are pre-designed to connect to a lot of these enterprise systems already, it does save time. It does save effort. It makes, streamlines the operation a bit.
I think there needs to be more of this going on, because the emphasis needs to be on data versus technology. Because the companies that are looking at all these different features that these vendors have, they need to understand how they're going to get there. And it's never talked about how we're going to get you there. I still think they're all stuck at the fear level, but that's the precursor to change management. They haven't even got through that yet, because they're so worried about it. And I've been to a lot of conferences already this year, and a lot of the companies that we're talking about and vendors are still talking highly about features and functionality, where the customers, I think, are still stuck on how they're going to get there to actually be able to utilize that. And the facts and the numbers, I read something recently that, I don't know if it's this low, but it's like less than 10% of unstructured data is being used. So I think it's probably in the low, like less than 5 actually, but I'm not sure. But I've seen some pretty substantially numbers that are lower than I would expect. I'm not sure what all your feedback is on that.
Hey guys, just one quick point. I think I have feedback from the audience that my microphone wasn't right, so I just changed it. Can you guys confirm that you guys are able to hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
Leonard, okay, perfect.
Maybe Leonard didn't like what you had to say.
That's why he's saying, yeah, you never know. Leonard can confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, Leonard made a comment. He said vendors have to educate their customers about data collection, silos, structured, unstructured data. And then vendors would rather sell magic, but not the hard work behind it. The problem is, Leonard, that the vendors, they're getting to the point where that's all they're doing right now is selling those features and functionality, where the customers are lost, because it's not simple with so much technology to look at which is the right, which is the wrong to use. I know we're getting off on a tangent here, but it's kind of a fun subject.
I mean, it's an important subject. Absolutely. One of the things that I liked about Precisely, and not this specific announcement, but if you look at their tools in general, is they have one whole section of their tools organized around automating data, finding data across your business. And that's one of the biggest issues when you start to layer on these autonomous systems, is even just where is everything? Like it's a tough one, and it's something that needs to be automated. But I was talking to a vendor yesterday, and they were talking about all these new features and functions, and they sent me the press release. I went through the press release, and the most important thing in the whole announcement was the fact that they had all these data automation tools, and they didn't mention them once when they did the briefing. It's easy to focus on the cool stuff, but in the end, the stuff that makes it work, that we got to start there.
Well, it has to be more customer centric. What does the customer need? Look at the customer angle, because when you have all this technology, how many of the customers are that advanced to understand all the technology? Anyway, any final thoughts on this, Shashi? What do you think?
Yeah, one thing that Sam touched on is, where does Precisely fit in, right? SAP could probably develop this capability internally, but it'll take them a very long time. And traditionally, most of these companies 10 years ago have been very proprietary, not allowing others to do anything with their systems. but they realize they're going to lose customers if they do that. So I think I see the trend about more and more, especially with SAP's partners, who are actually making their platform much more functional and efficient using integration partners like Precisely. Right.
Yep.
And I think service integrators will probably use Precisely or companies like that to get their projects through very quickly.
Good point. All right, should we go to the next one unless anybody has anything? No, data is a big deal. So, Jewel for developers. This is I would assume a capability that we would always think that would be there, based upon what SAP's been touting. I think this is a good thing, obviously, to help the developers do their business process automation capabilities with AI, specifically to create new tools from the developers or new automations from the developers. Any negatives on this, guys?
No.
I just well, I mean, it is really important capability. I just wonder if we aren't pretty late in the rollout here. But that's just me. We've seen the code tools from generative AI companies, being used greatly across development, across all sorts of things. I mean, even Google said they were doing 25% or more of their programming was all automated through AI. So I don't know. That's my only comment is, yeah, it's important to have, but it would have been important to have last year too.
What has to be in place, Sam, for this to work?
Yeah, so I guess overall, honestly speaking, this is already working. And I think Shashi made a post yesterday that he could create CRM, I guess, using generative AI, using Zoho's capabilities, right? So, if they can create some sort of CRM code from that, then every vendor is probably going to have this. Overall, I don't see any sort of negatives. In my mind, the negatives are going to be, look, if you look at anybody's code, I think the maintainability of the code was always the biggest problem. If Thomas is going to write something, I'm probably not going to be able to understand. Or what I'm going to write, then Thomas is not going to be able to understand, because our heads are wired very, 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 very differently. Okay, so that's where the real problem was with the code. That, okay, we had so much code, but nobody understood what that did. So hopefully, now with these capabilities, we are going to have superior insights, overall inside what is happening inside the code. But right now, my fear is going to be that we are going to have a lot more machine generated code. And I don't know where is the kind of the end to it. That would be my take on this. This is great. It can do a lot that developers used to do. So now we are going to spend a lot more time in understanding what is machine generated as well as what is happening inside these code bases.
Do you think it's mostly from an optimization perspective?
What?
From an optimization perspective, to optimize that code, to be able to do it efficiently, but optimize how it works. So you're going to create the application, the codes could be optimized. It's going to have a process workflow, that's going to be, somewhat automatically generated, basically off of this. Or what do you think the end result? It sounds like it's a win-win.
In my experience, when you look at optimization, you need to still understand the optimization. So if somebody says that, hey, I'm going to go get into the code, optimize this, but please tell me what you did, because I need to know that. Yeah. If I don't understand, I'm not going to trust, because I need to know the implications as well. It's not just the, maybe you increase the speed, but how did you do it? Please tell me.
No, for time being, you are right. Look at it like old style gearboxes. Take cars. Yeah. In the 80s, we said, or 90s even, I could shift manually faster than the gearbox. Right now, this is no more true. Yeah. So the lesson behind that is that the code probably gets better than whatever 99% of all developers can create. And it's probably not yet there. But the point is not whether it's better or not. The key point is trust, and trust will come.
Yeah. I mean, I think Yeah, I think you're right, Thomas, that things are changing so rapidly, and you're at a point where, right now, sure, 25% of the code might be generated by AI at Google, but what's it going to be a year from now? We know it's going to increase dramatically, and so I think over time, the developers have to turn into more conceptual design, modeling, and QA than anything. So.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the QA is going to be done by AI as well. So AI is creating, and AI is also QAing. So I don't know. I mean, how to trust AI, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have to. I think one of those things about transparency and that sort of thing comes into play here too, right? You don't want to just create black boxes. You want to be able to at least have developers who understand what the code's doing and how it's been written.
Yep.
Yeah.
We needed this 25 years ago when I was learning Java and struggling with creating objects and things like that, right? And one thing they forgot is Fortran. I mean, the government could use things like this to convert Fortran to any other language, modern language. But it will save people time because they don't have to keep repeating the same thing that they're already doing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and in general, Shashi, I guess the challenges that we have in the government for not able to create or convert those systems, generally, it's not necessarily just the code. It's going to be the scalability, the design, the architecture. There are so many different political forces that need to be aligned, and I don't think AI is the answer for that. What AI can bring to the table is going to be standardization, consistency in writing the code. So hopefully, it's going to be slightly more readable, unless it's going to be cryptic, which is always possible. Then we need AI again to be able to understand the code.
Yeah.
I mean, a clear example of data is like the controversy over dates, right? In older systems. So that's a clear example of why data should be clean before you can actually use AI for everything else.
The real point is where Leonard just made his comment.
Yeah.
The start is, as usual, where the required experience level is not that high. Means companies instantly take that as a segue into, okay, I don't need juniors. And then all of a sudden, the existing seniors, which are the remaining force, basically, get battle scars in their face and want to retire. Like, look at me. Yeah. So I'm quite senior. 20 years from now, I'm out of the workforce. And if companies look that short term at this problem, hey, I can save some developers and the associated salaries, then they are truly and thoroughly staffed. Because, well, they put themselves out of people who can do the remaining job that Shashi just alluded to, doing the supervision of it, because they don't have the experience anymore. So this is the real problem.
Is there any, what my original question was, is there any setup that's needed to take advantage of Joule? Like, is it out of box work, or is there something that needs to be initiated from a setup perspective? Because the way that a lot of this technology is put together, not put together, but presented, is that it's out of the box, and it's not. I mean, an example would be, hey, look at Salesforce and AI agents. Does anybody think that works out of the box? So
depends on your definition there, because it does work, and they do have pre-configured agents. Yeah. So
it's based on an enormous amount of data. So sales work. Yeah. So this, I would think, would be a lot less complicated. Yeah. That's the question. But sure, they all have out of the box. I agree.
The biggest precondition is dollars that need to be put into the box. Yeah. That's the biggest precondition, and then it mostly works for simpler scenarios.
Okay.
The one comment that, and Thomas, I think you might have actually been in this meeting with the former CEO of Zoho, Sridhar Vembu, and now CTO, said to us that he'd been working a lot around. And this is one of the reasons he moved from CEO to the CTO role, because he wanted to spend more time working on what's happening with developers. And his concept with this was that almost all code's going to be written by AI in a very short period of time. Yeah. But what has to change is the fact that we still need and need elevated skills in the conceptual design of what you want it to do, how you want it to do things. So it's a change in the role. It doesn't mean we don't need developers. We do, but the job's going to look different over the next few years.
Yeah, I agree. Sam, anything closing you want to add, or should we go to the next slide?
Let's go to the next one. Yeah.
So Codeworks, very interesting, and they're probably in the right business with their warehouse management system, and they've added some new tools for their supply chain data management, which I think is great, where they're able to update and do different rates and stuff like that. I think this is really a big area. I'm not tremendously close to this company, but as far as from a supply chain management perspective and how they work with logistics companies, warehouse management systems are a big key for companies if the data is right, because inventory control and the tracking around that, and vendor relationships and things of that nature, and asset controls, I think are a big deal. So this company does that. Do we think this is anything it's tremendously exciting or par for the course, because they need to stay close to new features on a continual basis?
Yeah, so I am personally not familiar, with the company. Obviously, we track a lot of different WMS systems, but we have never come across these guys. But overall, if you look at the WMS space, it's slightly fragmented. I would say there are two different branches of the WMS systems. One is going to be slightly more the mainstream manufacturing sort of value chain, and the second is going to be slightly more 3PL service-centric companies in the logistics space. And the service-centric companies, the consulting companies that we have supply in the supply chain space, they generally maintain their own WMS systems. Sometimes they are very custom built just because of their unique processes, just because they are running the whole supply chain business on those WMS systems. So I don't know where these guys sort of fit into that. Maybe they could be on the 3PL side of the things. But when I hear things such as your flexible warehouse systems or warehouse management systems, I don't know if there are going to be any sort of warehouse systems that are going to be flexible. They all are fairly rigid. In fact, when you have to interface with hardware, there's only so much flexibility you are going to have. You are going to be tied to very specific devices that you can interface with. So here they are claiming a lot of different things from the asset perspective, from the flexibility perspective. But I don't know. I mean, overall, where do they stand in the market is going to be my question.
Anybody have any insights on that?
I mean, I don't know the company that well, and it's not, and certainly not my space, but I do work a lot with IoT, and that's the one thing that I thought was, as I went through their site, just trying to understand what they do, they've barely mentioned real time, and if you talk about where warehouse management's going in the near future, it really is automation from IoT, and so I just there wasn't a lot of story there. Maybe there is, and I just didn't see it. But
small company.
That's the one that's kind of missing. Yeah, it's small.
Yeah. My only comment on this is not from a technical perspective, but more from a marketing perspective. I don't understand what are the enhancements, because the little that I know of software companies like this, they should be doing this already. So a little bit of a comparison, maybe a landscape saying that here's the problem that customers have today with logistics software, and here's what we want them to do next. And that's why we've done 1, 2, and 3 would have been a better way to put this. Well, it looks like it's been written by the CEO.
Fair point.
I mean, they've improved their tracking. They've improved some of the things around importing and updating supply types and rates and things of that. These are par for the course. These should just be yearly updates, I would think. But I do feel this is a great area of concern in the industries, which is supply chain, which is a way to make up the monies that you potentially don't have a firm grasp on because of the fact of you might be doing it manually. So
I think whatever you said should have been in their press release, right?
Exactly.
But Sam, I mean, we're a big fan of ERP, and SCM, I think, is not fully. The layers aren't as deep that companies are using the layers that are available, and so those layers that are available can really give automation in areas that can be efficient and save money. Where because I think costs are up, sales are down. Where do you get those margins back? And I think supply chain is an area where you can get them back if you're automated. If you're not automated, you could be spending money to get automated. So it goes back to the data question that we were talking about, half an hour ago. That it has to start there. But Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so I guess you are right, but I mean, overall, technology alone cannot solve these problems. To be completely honest, I don't care how advanced they are, and that's where your processes and data, those need to be aligned in 90% of the cases. Especially when you look at these smaller systems, what they are trying to do is they are trying to automate broken processes because they don't necessarily understand the supply chain at a broader level. And sometimes when you look at more from the product lenses, customers do feel that some of the mainstream products are very far away from them just because of the misalignment in understanding of these concepts. So they don't want to invest in the change management training, which is your favorite topic, Robert. I know that, right? But it just companies don't see value in that. And that's where the major problem is. They just see that, okay, consulting dollars, I'm going to get a report out of it. What do I do with that? I train my employee, they are going to leave the organization. What do I do?
Yeah. Yep. Well, change management is always a great topic, but it seems like it's still thrown underneath the covers because companies don't feel or vendors don't feel that they just put together a methodology, but they're not still talking on the lines that the customer gets it because they're still sitting back like, I'm scared to death. I got 10 locations. Let's just do one, see how it goes. They do the one and then they're done because they don't want to do anymore. I think it's a big challenge emotionally and just everything involved that it takes to get it done. I mean, it's a gigantic undertaking. I mean, Sam, you know this. I mean, how big of a deal do you put on change management?
Yeah, so I guess, when you look at any of the formula code model, there is only so much they are going to scale. When you look at the change management is supposed to be personalized, individualized training that you have to provide, and that becomes very expensive. The problem is that companies don't have money. That's where the real problem is. And I don't think vendors can solve that. The customers, they need to understand and appreciate that they need to enable their employees. They need to invest in change management, training, alignment of processes, and that has very little to do with the technology.
Well, it needs to be promoted by the company that if you don't do reoccurring change management training, that this investment that we just made will not maximize.
Exactly.
But, I mean,
go ahead, Thomas.
This one is that's in general from a content point of view. My first reaction is, wow, yawn. Yeah, but you just said something interesting, Sam. Change management, people, processes. So if you flip this a little around, this press release is all about making it easier for people, not automating them away, which is from that perspective a bit refreshing.
Yep. All right. Well, what do we got next?
Yeah.
So prefab marketplace, Wavemaker, I'm not tremendously familiar with them, but this appears to be doing something for the customers and putting everything in place for them to take and accelerate these initiatives. Shashi, is this on your wavelength? What do you think?
No comment on this. Far above my knowledge.
No. Okay. So this deals with obviously the telecommunication area. Who'd like to take a stab at this?
I can go for it. Or Michael, I think you are probably closer to it.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about the marketplace piece of it because that's actually the interesting thing to me in this, and I think that's the real message. And you're seeing this across, and obviously we've had these since the App Exchange and other places we've had these for a while, but more and more you're seeing vendors come out with with these areas where they're either doing pre-configured agents like Agent Exchange, or like you're doing visualizations like Tableau's Marketplace and things like that. So it's a common approach, and 5G technology, particularly in the IoT edge computing world, is really important. So it does seem to me like this could be a really beneficial thing from a developer perspective, because it does give you, pieces and parts to put together in the right ways to build the apps that you're looking for. It should accelerate development.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think?
So this is very interesting because I don't think I have seen any company doing any work in the 5G space. So when this is 5G embedded, so that's why it's really interesting for me that at least something is happening. And obviously 5G is probably going to be a very similar change as AI. I don't know when that is going to come. 5G, quantum, all of these are going to be big forces that are going to change the customer experience, I guess, the way we interact with applications. So that's why it's kind of interesting that, okay, somebody is doing something. And obviously, this is more from the development perspective that they are enabling. So I don't know, how much momentum they are going to get overall from the marketplace perspective, as Michael mentioned. But it's very interesting, and I think we need to find more companies, what is happening in the 5G space and how that is going to change our spaces.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, what do you think of how this interacts with, like, from the IoT perspective?
Well, from the IoT perspective, that level of connectivity, because you're moving moving a lot of data around, you do do a lot of it at the edge, but you are also, doing connectivity back to automate different processes. And you add, AI, you add robotics, you add all these other things that are going to use that sensor data for different things. Then the ability to communicate that data in a stream in real time is really important. And so 5G has been a big discussion, in the IoT space for a while, and it is in use, obviously already in a lot of the applications that you see for new IoT implementations.
Right.
One thing I like about this is the last point, because companies are struggling hard with SIM swap and things like that, which I think is very difficult to prevent, other than the user locking down their entire thing. So maybe that's something that other companies don't have.
Yep. Okay.
It's interesting.
Anything in the crowd? Any comments?
I think we have touched on the major ones, so we can keep going, I guess, on the next story if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that this probably hits home pretty good for you, Thomas, with customer engagement with Braze. And, they're buying OfferFit, which is an AI decisioning company. It's a pretty substantial number, I felt. And wondering from you guys if you think that they're actually getting the money back for this this pretty substantial buy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can start. So overall, I guess, when I look at Braze, it's a very enterprise-centric product. And in my mind, if I look at their competition right now, their competition is probably going to be, ServiceNow, which is making waves in the CRM space, Pegasystems, because these guys, if you look at the major value prop that you have from the Braze perspective, if I recall correctly, that is going to be the real-time engagement. That's what they talk about. And that is going to be for any sort of media companies, media channels, for the most part. That's where their secret sauce is. So overall, I don't see this as a very heavy price tag, to be completely honest. If they are providing AI decisioning, and I think we have seen other similar acquisitions that were more into the conversation space. I don't know how the conversation differs from the AI decisioning. I'm going to feel that this is going to be more of the rule engine. And I don't know whether you guys are familiar with any of the rule engine, that some of these platforms used to have. I think Pegasystems has one. It's a big component of these call center workflows. You guys have some background with TIPCO as well. TIPCO used to have a rule engine as well. So now that rule engine may be modernized, maybe getting modernized to AI flavor. Generally, those rule engines were very, 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 very difficult to implement, etc. It was a big, nasty hairball, I guess. So I don't see this as a big price point, to be completely honest, if it is offering that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big price point, but let me give you a little different take on why. So one of the biggest problems that marketing's had for a while is this concept of customer journey maps. They don't work because customers don't follow your map. Guess what?
Yeah.
But what's starting to come out now is the capability to build dynamic journey maps that are based on real-time data flow and react to those interactions, predict what you should do, and then continue that engagement. And this is the kind of thing that feeds into that concept, personalizing customer journeys in real time. And so to me, that is the place we're going to very quickly. And so it plays right into that theme of how do I make journey maps actually usable?
Right, and that is probably the key point behind the acquisition, which is not even mentioned in that announcement. I mean, it's about personalization and using even more data points about me to make an email of all of it appear more personalized to me. Yeah. So the end game can only be dynamic journeys.
Yeah.
Having said that, as a little barb, this whole thing of journey map is a total misnomer because they don't provide a map. What they actually want to do is a route plan. So they basically do the Google Maps jobs of routing me from A to B without even asking me how I want to travel.
Yeah, well, and not taking into account the fact that I'm not going to follow it and I'm not even going to go in a linear path, right? I'm going to go back and forth and around and up and down.
Yeah. So that's
there's also a lot of competition in this functionality space from enterprise search, also from people who are specifically like enterprise content management systems trying to create more dynamic experiences for customers based on what they've been doing. So it'll be interesting to see which is adopted, but it's going to be confusing for companies to say like, now there's a much wider way. I strongly suspect incumbent software companies providing this functionality of dynamic customer journeys would probably win in this.
Robert, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
I was on mute. So why don't we go to the next one? Unless there's anything else we want to cover on this?
Okay, we can go to the next one.
So we got Aviva partnership with ServiceNow. This is a pretty interesting one. It accelerates industrial transformation, with Aviva's intelligence platform. I think it's called Connect with ServiceNow's, platform as well with the automation and workflows. What do you guys think? I mean, I know there's competition that's doing something similar, but there's a lot of benefits with the unified operations, improved asset performance. It helps, with unplanned downtime. One of the things that I was looking into this, that AWS has partnerships, Microsoft has partnerships, IBM has partnerships similar to this. How do you think this stacks up to those? And what do we think about this, or to win across the board and more competition to this type of industry?
So, Robert, when you say they have partnership, meaning Aviva has partnership or ServiceNow has partnership?
No, so Aviva and ServiceNow have a partnership specifically for AI-enabled industrial operations. AWS has one with GE Digital. It's for their industrial cloud and digital twins. Siemens has one with Microsoft. IBM has one with Mitsubishi Electric. These all kind of are in the same space. Wanted to see where this kind of stacks up against those from a comparison standpoint. If you do think it's really talking about how they drive industrial transformation through AI automation, and as Michael might be away with, IoT and IIoT convergence and stuff of that nature. All this information, I think, is really important because it's kind of going in the direction of a lot of data and automation.
The one thing that kind of jumped out to me was a storyline underneath this from ServiceNow and how they're really trying to compete in the agentic AI space with their platform, and they're looking for partners. This is a really good opportunity to showcase something in an area where Salesforce perhaps hasn't talked yet, and obviously they're trying to compete effectively with Agentforce and all that Salesforce has done. So that, to me, that sort of seemed like
You think that's the market?
is it good for customers? Sure. But it also seemed like a play from the competitive position.
Yeah, but is the competitive situation that, or is it more what I was mentioning with some of the vendors that I was talking about, or is it more what you're talking about, or both?
Well, I think it's probably on both sides of this, right? I mean, from an Aviva standpoint, it's getting a partnership that gives them access to that capability and plays well in the marketplace if a lot of their competitors are already, partnering with AWS and et cetera. So that, to me, that side. And then the other side, from a ServiceNow perspective, it definitely, to me, plays right into that ongoing and growing battle between them and Salesforce.
Yeah. So go ahead.
For Aviva, this is simply something one needs to have these days.
Yeah.
Agent capabilities, which you need to get from somewhere. And for ServiceNow, this is purely competitive. So for Aviva, hey, we are there too. And from ServiceNow is mindshare. Just minimum that to be able to fend off and a sales force that is increasingly no more. I want to get into their ticker symbol on the stock. So they need to change their ticker symbol. They are no more about CRM. They are about data and automation in general. Meanwhile.
Yeah, I've been joining a few calls with our manufacturing software analysts. What I've seen from that is the manufacturing software space is very niche. So there are not too many players there. Yeah. There are manufacturers themselves who have actually turned their own software into almost like something that they sell to other industries. Plus, they have companies like Aviva who are exclusively software providers, right? Now they've moved to automate things, but they've not moved as fast as what we are seeing outside with other players, rightfully because they can't really change anything overnight. To me, this seems Aviva and ServiceNow seems more like how do we get more business from both sides? Like ServiceNow gets entry into industrial organizations, and Aviva probably gets into any of the ServiceNow customers who are industries, right? That's what I think. But it's a good positive move.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Robin. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'll comment after you do.
Yeah. So, Shashi, I guess the right term here for this market segment is going to be fragmented, which is probably right for this market segment. And when you say manufacturing technology, Aviva would be in that MES space. That's their sort of bread and butter manufacturing execution system. Sometimes manufacturing execution systems pair up with some of the core engineering systems, which are going to be your CAD, CAM, some of the software that go into the machines. Now, the challenge that you have in this space is going to be very similar to the supply chain or the logistics space, right? Because, a lot of manufacturing companies, as you correctly pointed out, these are not just the manufacturing companies, these are hardware vendors. And when you say hardware vendors, you have control system vendors, you have the real machine vendors, you have robotic automation vendors, and everybody is trying to get the piece of the pie because they all need to sell more hardware. Okay, and the space is so complicated because every machine is going to have their own sort of protocol, and it's very hard to create one unifying platform that is going to connect with pretty much everything. There are concepts such as the UNS and open namespace, and I don't know how many different, but then those technologies are going to require substantial investment as well from the company's perspective. So the reason why you have all of those partnerships, Robert, to your comment, because everybody is trying to get into these manufacturing technology. So if you look at GE, I mean, what is GE? Is it a software company? Definitely not. It's not meant to be a software company. Okay, Siemens, is it a software company? No. But they all either have their own internal technology because they all are trying to either sell machines or they are working with one of the MES vendors to be able to do that. So here, the partnership that you're looking at from the ServiceNow and Aviva perspective, ServiceNow already had very deep penetration into telco, and telco is going to be so big into these devices and the edge applications, the satellites, the communications, all of that. But then Aviva is going to have the real Industry 4.0 flavor. So that's what they sort of bring to the table overall from the alignment perspective, in my mind. But Aviva is a very outdated, legacy technology. They are not even on cloud right now. So I don't know how they are going to get AI. I don't know.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
Are we talking, and I think that's what we're talking about, when we talk about industrial transformation, I mean, to me, we're talking about industrial processes. And we're talking about how we move manufacturing processes along, how we move handling of materials and controls and automation and maintenance, environmental management. To me, that's a gigantic component within a company, specifically a manufacturing company, that I would think would need a lot of help to automate, because that's outside of the ERP system generally. So this is probably a very good partnership. But I always mentioned at the beginning, there's other companies that are doing it too, but I do advocate for it. But if the technology is not there, currently it's needed, but in the end, I think it's a great thing. The companies need it. As this partnership works, I would think that it would be prosperous. But some of the approaches I'm seeing, we mentioned AI, but getting back to Michael and this IoT thing, sensors are a big deal. With the IoT things, and this all for it all have to work. You have to go to the edge. You have to bring in IoT. You have to get to Industry 5.0 and then 6.0 coming soon. But in the end, I think that this is probably an untapped area, and maybe we'll see a lot more of it. But Sam, you might see different.
For Aviva, it might be a matter of just survival, because in contrast, I beg to disagree with what Sam just said. So Siemens has its roots, and GE as well, for example, to put a US company, they have their roots in manufacturing, in machines, so building machines, but they have become technology companies. So they have their own software divisions. Look at the Siemens division DI, Digital Industries. This is mostly about software. They have a division called SW, which stands for software. So that gives companies like these a moat against pure play software vendors, because they sell the services and the software along with the machinery. And the Avivas of this planet need to penetrate that. That's why they need high visibility partnerships that those Siemens and GEs of this planet need as well, and don't necessarily have.
Okay. Thoughts, anyone? Michael, anything more on that?
I mean, I just say that, Thomas, I completely agree. I think that misnomer to say GE Digital is not a software company. I mean, they certainly invested heavily in doing that and coupling that with all the other mechanical things they do and machinery, that sort of thing. And then Siemens, I mean, they're a PLM company. They're a software company across a whole bunch of different divisions. So it's a key part of their strategy, no question.
Yeah, I think you'll see more of this as things, materialize with investing in modernization, because I think this is a key component. I don't know, Sam, but are you seeing that, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I guess, there is always going to be distinction between your product and operations technology versus the business technology. You can be all over the place. Nobody stops you. Everybody can do pretty much everything. But if you want to look at the clarity of business models, right? The more you are going to be in your lane, the more successful you will be. And then you need to make alliances. And that's exactly what ServiceNow is doing. They could have probably built this, but they are making alliance with a key partner that is far more prevalent in the manufacturing space.
Yep. All right. Should we You want to do one more? Should we go into something interesting to close, or what do you guys all want to do?
We could discuss the Sam's statement from right now. Stick to your lane or become a multi-capability vendor. So this is the pendulum that's continuously swinging back and forth. So how many capabilities do I have that augment my core capabilities?
Well, do you want to be everything to everyone, or do you want to be niche in order to be the one?
Look at Microsoft.
Yeah.
What's their core capabilities these days, and where do they come from?
Yeah. Well, we can do that. Shashi, you want to close and go through that? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of companies are not going to stick to their lane because they're going to see opportunities, especially with new developments that are coming through, where they can encroach upon adjacent areas, in which case they'll probably displace another player. The best thing is if they're already providing a good software and their customers like them, I think those are the kind of companies that can actually expand their ones. But highly specialized industries like manufacturing, I agree with Sam that they have to keep making better software than just saying like, hey, this works, so why do anything about it? That's it.
Okay.
But great conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, what do you think? Is there your idea? So what do you?
Well, I think there are both strategies are very valid. And probably the real question is, how wide do I define my lane? So whether it's a 5-lane highway that I need and want to occupy, or whether it's a rural road that barely accommodates for 2 motorcycles passing each other. So that is probably the real question to ask. So I would fully agree that companies that are, let's say, having very disjointed products probably are better off keeping them as separate brands. But in general, why, if I have the means, why do focus on something that needs augmentation and I have the means to augment it myself?
Okay. Michael, what do you think?
I mean, this to me, this is the same evolutionary process we've seen in the tech industry for quite a while now, right? You've got startups that go after the cool new things. You've got big companies that are trying to maintain their customer base. Over time, they need to expand into adjacent areas. They buy up the startups so they don't have to do the development themselves, and that cycle just continues. And I don't think that's changing. Maybe it's going to accelerate a bit when you talk about all of these AI startups that have come up and the capabilities that the big enterprise companies need. But to me, it's kind of the same thing we've seen for quite a while.
I was actually groomed to be to focus on your core competencies and the niche, and to be, if you're everything for everyone, you're not going to be good at anything. You're going to be something that people or companies buy. But if you're the best in that space, you'll be the one that they'll buy first, or you have a leg up, and then you branch out. But I mean, Sam, you'll be able to piggyback this, but I do think specifically in some of these spaces where they need very high tech and substantial software, that to be the best in that area is a big deal. And then what happens is, like Thomas and Michael both said, that you'll be bought out by a different company. I mean, Apple has thousands and thousands of patents. I'm not sure what the number of patents they actually developed themselves, right? So they bought them from people because those companies developed them and they were absorbed. But I do think it's important to not to be everything for everyone. I think it's a bad strategy. I think the strategy is to be successful, then to branch out after that. But Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I mean, software is a very easy to start business. Everybody is sort of lured by the charm of it. It's very inexpensive. Anybody can write software, but selling software is a rocket science. I always say this. Okay, it's not easy at all. So stick to your lane, what you are really good at. If you are really good at making hardware, build really good hardware. You can use product technology, but have some sort of glue that ties everything together. I can close, Robert, if we are okay.
Yep.
All right,
Please.
guys. So that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our Analysts Gone Wild or Analysts Gone Grumpy, however you want to put it. And we meet every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. On that note, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.